Hey everyone, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make selected style deep house massive patches. It sounds something like this. So to go along with this video, I've actually just dropped a deep house slash future house massive pack on my Bandcamp. The link is in the description. It's the first link, you can't miss it. And yeah, it's just got a bunch of patches just like this for massive that you can use to take your sounds to the next level. I know it can be kind of hard sometimes to make the sounds from this style of music, so if you want to just use some presets, here you go. Or if you want some new inspiration, these are great as well. So yeah, check those out. Link is in the description. So I'm just gonna be going through layer by layer here and showing you what's going on. The first one we have is this bass, which sounds like this. And so the way I made this was obviously using Massive. Basically what it is it's a pretty standard sine wave FM kind of bass, but we just have a few things added on to make it a little bit nicer and a little bit more modern. So the core of this sound is the sine wave and the modulation oscillator. I'm using the phase here. You can see I modulated it with envelope 4 since that's also the volume envelope. I just wanted to do that to make it simple and clean. And yeah, if you don't know, the phase modulation in Massive is just the same as FM, like if you were doing FM with a sine wave. So we essentially have two sine waves doing FM here, and I have the modulation oscillator up an octave. And yeah, then after that, I added this pitch envelope to oscillator 1, which you'll see it's turned up all the way in there. And the reason why is because I actually like to control the level of that with here. It's a lot easier for me to just drop, just drop the envelope on and drag it up to 64 than it is for me to sit there and play around with that dial. So I just took that and dragged it up to 64, and then I turned the level down here. And that's how I like to control the amount of pitch envelope on this. So then after that, I have it going into a low pass filter and then into a sine shaper. If we look at the routing, the sine shaper is actually after the filter. And you can hear that's subtle, but it just adds a little bit more of that FM style, like, wave shaping. So then after that, I have it going into this classic tube distortion. So again, subtle, but it's just adding a little bit of warmth on top. And then I have that going into this dimension expander. So you can hear the dimension expander is just kind of helping to make it like wider and bigger sounding. I like using it a lot. But the key with these kind of clicky sounds is to turn the size all the way down, because if I start turning the size up, you kind of get like a do-do effect. So when you turn the size all the way down, you still get the stereo width, but it's not as like weird and clicky. So the next sound we have is this lead, which sounds like this. So the way I made this sound is basically it's a square wave with some just simple stuff going on. So the first thing we have here is, like I said, it's a square wave. I use square saw 1. And I used the same pitch envelope technique where I just put it on there and turn it up all the way. But as you can see, we controlled the actual level of the pitch envelope using the level here in this envelope. So then after that, I have a bit of white noise. It's kind of unnecessary, but it does add a little bit to like the overall sound that you're hearing in the track. And then I have that going into a low pass, which is sort of where most of the sound happens. And that's being controlled by envelope 4, which is also the volume envelope. And then I have that going into a sine shaper. If we look at the routing tab here, insert 1 is after the filter, so just another sine shaper. Again, just like with the bass, it's very subtle, but it just adds that extra little bit of like just depth to it. Like, this doesn't sound the same as if you just quickly put a low pass on a square wave, and it's because you got to take your time and like, sort of work with it and have a little bit of finesse. Like, try to do little subtle things that will all add up to a very different big picture than if you had done all the little subtle things. So then I just have that going into a dimension expander. Same thing, got the dry wet up and the size all the way down, and yeah. So then the last lead I'm gonna show you here sounds like this. And so this is just an extra sort of layer, just to add a little bit of sound, I guess. These two on their own sounded a little bit dry. So this one just gives it that nice little kind of like extra little bit of flavor, I guess. So the way I made this sound was it's a sine wave, and I'm doing a little bit of phase modulation, which, like I said before, just imagine it as doing FM with a sine wave. So the way I have this set up is we have a sine wave here, and I have it going into the phase modulation here. The phase modulation is actually up 19 semitones, and the reason for this is because I wanted it to be an octave and a fifth. So in massive, obviously the way you turn the pitch is just by the semitone with this thing, and then you can get in between with these little dials. But basically, yeah, the way that you would set this up to do an octave and a fifth is to put it up 19 semitones, because that is 12 semitones and then an extra 7 for the fifth. Now, one thing about this particular sound is I did use this restart via gate here on the phases, and if you listen, it sounds very uniform. Like that's like the thing about a lot of these kind of deep house synths is you almost want them to sound like samples, so a lot of times you actually want to do restart via gate on the phases because, yeah, again, it's going to sound more like a sample. A sample, the phase doesn't change each time you play it. It just keeps playing the same thing. So that's what this does, versus if I turn it off, you can hear it kind of sounds like it's a little bit different each time. But this just keeps it clean and uniform and nice sounding. So then the only other thing I actually did for this sound was I added the pitch envelope. Again, it's up all the way, and then we controlled the volume using this. And then I just have a bit of reverb on the output here. So if we listen without it, the reverb really gives this sound like a nice kind of ringing. I turned the size down a bit because, similar to what I was saying about the dimension expander earlier, you can still hear like a pretty audible sort of clicking or like doubling effect. But I'm not too concerned with that. I think it adds a nice thing to the overall mix. So yeah, so that is going to be it for today, guys. Like I said, make sure to check out the full Massive pack in the description. Like I said, it's got a bunch of deep house Massive patches in the style of selected / like future house that you definitely won't want to miss if you're looking to make this style. And yeah, that's going to be it for today, guys. Make sure to let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Check out my social media, which is on the screen now, and I will see you again tomorrow with another tutorial.